All right, I think, Steve, we should start.
Great.
Okay, great. So good morning to everybody. It's people who've joined in to the webinar. My name is Immanuel, and I take care of an HR vertical in the Middle East. And before talking about myself, I'd like to bring in Steve this morning, who's going to be our guest, who's been gracious enough to attend this webinar and add value to all of us. So Steve has been a great HR, how do I put that? A great HR figure in the Middle East, and he's currently in Australia. And Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so that I don't make any mistakes in adding value to who you are.
No problem. Well, thanks for having me, Immanuel. It's great to be on this webinar. So I'm Steve. I've been in HR and actually specifically recruitment and talent acquisition all my career. It's all I've ever done. So I started 24 years ago in a recruitment agency. I did an HR degree to start with, then worked in recruitment agency for about 8, 9 years, and then moved in-house. So since then, I've really been sort of working with employers. Started in as a recruiter within those employers, but slowly sort of moved into head of recruitment roles. So I'm from the UK originally, so I left the UK in 2011. When I left, I was working for British Telecom. I'd been with them for about 6 years, and I was head of their graduate and internship. So a big sort of transformation piece there as we relaunched the graduate program after the global financial crisis. Then moved to the Middle East. So I lived in Dubai for 6 years. I was head of recruitment for Shaloub Group. So I did a big transformation, managing a team of recruiters across the Middle East. And then I was a regional head of talent acquisition for AIG across sort of big insurance company across Middle East, Africa and India. And I spent a lot of time in India where we were building three large shared service functions. Met my wife in London. She was from Australia, and now we're here. We've been here for 3 years. I've just in the last year started my own business, but for the first 2 years I did a big transformation of a big childcare business here. So we operate 600 centres across Australia, and I was brought in to transform their recruitment. Now I have my own business, and I now help other employers improve the way that they do talent acquisition. So I'm not a recruitment agency, but I go in and I help around strategy and process and recruiter capability. So sorry, a very long intro, but I've been in the game for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like the audience to also know that we have somebody who's really in the game of jobs and has been through a lot of uncertain markets and how we've operated. So I'm glad you really introduced yourself in such elaboration. But before we get into a lot of the questions that I wanted to ask you, let me just ask you, Steve, you've been operating in times that have been uncertain, at least over a decade right now, right? And what do you think takes people to build resilience, both from a candidate perspective and from a recruiter perspective, to work through uncertain times together? What are your thoughts about working together from a recruitment HR point of view during uncertain times?
Yeah, so I think from a recruitment perspective, I know even though if you're a recruiter that's not actively recruiting right now, or vacancy numbers are down, now's really the time to be there for your candidates. So, you know, when we talk about sort of best practice recruitment, we're always in-house, we're always talking about sort of working with, you know, pipelines of talent, pools of talent, and building communities of talent. And now's the time really to be there for the candidates. So we're seeing a lot of sort of work over, certainly in what I'm seeing in Australia at the moment, a lot of work where recruiters are really helping job seekers and candidates with sort of, you know, best practice advice around CV writing, what a CV could look like. So it's, for me, you know, recruiters, you know, it's the opportunity for them to really be sort of working and speaking and networking with their candidates, and equally with job seekers doing the same with recruiters. So you know, I can't emphasize enough the importance of really starting to build that sort of network with employees that you're interested in, recruiters that you're interested in. And interestingly, you know, over here, one of the pieces of work that I'm involved in at the moment is we're a group of volunteers, all from the talent acquisition space, who have, you know, either lost roles themselves, or as in my case, you know, my business has sort of slowed down a little bit. We're called Jobs for Australia. So we're a group of volunteers that are actually now going out and helping job seekers and giving free advice around job seekers in Australia, free advice around, you know, CVs and how to write a CV. And we do Zoom chats and we coach around that space. So I think it's really sort of that sort of give back and value add that recruiters can really provide, because we've, you know, as a function, we've got some fantastic knowledge to share.
Right. That's brilliant. And I also want to tell you, thank you so much for, you know, I mean, just acknowledging my message. We've not really met each other. We've not known you. But you've acknowledged this whole invitation, and you've made yourself available for us. The reason I say that is because not too many recruiters out there actually take out time to respond to candidates or their communication, or they just think it's so mundane to talk to people because they probably get in like hundreds, thousands of messages from candidates across the world and all of that. And many times when you make yourself available, it kind of takes a lot out of you. How do you do that, Steve? I mean, how do you make yourself available? How do you tell people, okay, we're here to help you? I mean, I think that in itself is a great gesture, right?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, for me, it's, you know, I had to make a decision with my business, right? Do I really try and push on and do more and more? And I'm, you know, obviously I want to try and keep the business going, but with the business slowing down, I've got some free time, and I really feel this is the opportunity to start to give back. And, you know, over the last sort of month and a half, you know, I think I've met more people in that month and a half online than I've probably met in the last 2 years in total, just because, and it's not just me, lots of people sort of reaching out going, hey, look, we never had the time to chat. We've now probably got the time to chat. Let's chat, you know. So I made the conscious decision of, you know, I want to get out there. I want to talk to as many people. I want to take this opportunity to learn. I've got a bit more extra time. So, you know, let's use that and start to network. And it's that power of the network really. It's opened up so many opportunities, including talking to you guys, you know, today. It's, you know, that would never have happened unless I'd sort of made that decision. But I'm seeing more, I see lots of people doing that. And I think it's all about sort of giving back and sharing, and we're all in this together, right? So let's work together through it.
Right. Thanks so much for the question. Just want to address everybody here actually on the audience. Just give me a second, Steve. All right, good morning once again for the people who join in right now. We've got Steve this morning once again, and he's talking to us about the global view on jobs and what the market is going to be looking like in just about a few minutes. And yes, and please mute yourselves. We do not want any disturbance during the webinar. I request all of you to do that. In about a few minutes, we can have your questions coming in on the chat box. Unfortunately, we will not be able to unmute you because there's plenty of people. We have over 100 people right now on the webinar. And I would not want anyone to be, you know, disappointed that their questions are answered, but we'll try to answer as many questions as possible after I have a few questions that are very generic for Steve. So welcome once again. So Steve, I probably had a few questions that I've listed out that I think I wanted to ask you. So let's start with the more general perspective into the whole, how do jobs look right now globally? And then I probably want you to tell us a little bit about the Middle East right now. How does it look in Asia, the subcontinent, or other places, and in Australia as well? I mean, what is a view of what does it look like? Because unemployment in countries have skyrocketed in a few weeks. What do you think is going to look like in the next few weeks?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I mean I'm certainly not an economist, but I've got a bit of a view, I think, of how we're going to go. I think, you know, I think as the economy activity sort of resumes gradually, I think it's going to take some time just for the situation to sort of normalize a little bit. I think as you know, organizations start to look at what the consumer behaviors are and how they've changed, and You know, I think continued social distancing and a bit of uncertainty will evolve. So I think even though the economic activity gradually will change, the situation will take a bit of time to sort of normalize,
right,
and move forward. I was reading something in the by the IMF in their World Economic Report for 2020, and which was saying that, you know, firms may start hiring more people, expanding their payroll, only slowly, but as you know, as they're not quite clear really what that demand for sort of their output of organizations is yet. So I think it's really gonna, as we sort of economic activity starts to come back, I think it's going to be a sort of watch this space really. But there's certainly organizations, you know, hiring out there right now, and we've got organizations here in Australia that have been, you know, really busy. If you look at sort of the major sort of supermarket and retailers, if you look at some of the aged care facilities, they've been pretty busy as well. So a number of different sectors. And the Amazon announced in the US they were hiring sort of another 100,000 people out there. So there certainly are pockets of hiring going on. But it'd be interesting to see, I think, the next couple of weeks, as some countries sort of try and get that sort of economic move forward. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Right. So you do see this picking up in a substantial way. That's what I can make out from what you're saying. But having said that, what is there something is there a time frame that we can talk about by when we can see something substantial or robust in terms of the jobs seen in different markets? A year?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's a hard one to sort of pin down in terms of timeframes, because I think we're all sort of learning as we're going through this pandemic, right? So I think as we sort of, as I said, as we gradually get into sort of that more economic activity happening in countries, we'll start to see, you know, what that sort of means in terms of, you know, in terms of growth. I don't think there's going to be a substantial hiring going on. I think it will be gradual, but it will based on the economic situation, I think. Yeah, I think it's very much a watch this space and see how we go, and it's incremental steps every week really, as it's been throughout the pandemic.
Right. And you also specifically mentioned that the recruitment activity has been pretty much active in Australia, and you also mentioned about supermarkets and retailers and things like that. So is it a time to look at, you know, enhancing skills or trying to be more versatile or multitasking? Because if you look at certain industries as really thriving, e-commerce is one, and retail online is everybody's taking their business online at the moment. So what would be your advice about, you know, juggling around things right now, being more flexible? What is your view on that, Steve?
Yeah, I think you know, one of the things we talk to our job seekers about when they come to us with Jobs for Australia is really looking at sort of trying to understand what those transferable skills are that you have and how they can apply to other opportunities. So I think sort of really looking at, you know, what skill sets you have, what transferable skills you could move to another sector potentially if there is opportunities that you're interested in there. But I think some of the key skills that job seekers will, you know, and candidates and employers will be looking for as we sort of move into that next phase and post-pandemic are going to be things right around, you know, adaptability. We've all had to adapt somehow in this environment, and I think adaptability, although it's always been a skill that recruiters and employers have looked for, I think it's going to be even more important now. So that, you know, being able to adapt also makes you sort of flexible and resilient employee, and you can adjust to those changes quickly and respond well to changing responsibilities.
Right.
And tech savviness as well. I think, you know, we've moved now from, you know, lots of people not working from home to lots of people working from home. And, you know, I've certainly had to brush up some of my skills on the tech side of things. So yeah, I think tech savviness, I think things around data literacy, you know, it's going to be a critical asset.
And I kind of bug you over WhatsApp and keep messaging.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I think that, you know, data literacy, I think, is going to be really important. I think organizations are going to be using data much more now to, you know, to predict things for the future with their models going forward, and actually, you know, data is pretty useless unless there's sort of data literacy, so people equipped with the skills to understand that data and make better decisions of it. So I think there's lots of skills that, and that's just a few, that are going to be in demand post-pandemic, and this is really now the opportunity to start to, okay, identify what they might be and spend some time sort of developing them further.
Right. I'm going to pick up a question from the audience, and this is something I've also been wanting to ask. Some of the people, okay, now you've got a lot of organizations that always ask you, you've got to come in with experience. But what about a lot of people who are just graduating? I mean, a lot of students from universities and colleges across the world. They would have been hopes about getting into a prospective job and things like that, and a lot of offers have been revoked or put on hold in many places across the globe. So what do you think students probably should do when they're graduating at the moment, and what are recruiters looking for in the new talent? Is there anything that's changed?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's trying to remain as positive as possible. Remember that this isn't anybody's fault, so it's a situation we're in, and try and remain positive, because that positivity will feed through, right, when you're sort of speaking to employers. I think that's a really key thing, and I think again, a lot of the key skills that employers will be looking for will be similar to what they were pre-pandemic, but also I think the ones that I've mentioned will be that adaptability, that tech savviness. Right. So really looking at if there's graduates that maybe don't have much work experience, is really trying to pull the skills out of their study. Right. So what skills did they use during their study, and maybe some of their university engagement with their team, whether they were in teams, or all this sort of stuff that they did during their study times that they could bring through as transferable skills to an employer and highlight them. It's a really good way of doing that.
Right. And what would be something that they have to be, how do they keep themselves positive? Because it's so difficult to be in a lockdown and not have a job, and and all of your dreams shattered. And, is there a couple of things that they can do in this meantime, other than, of course, trying to attend these webinars or trying to talent? Is there anything that they can do? What would be your advice for the people coming in this break?
Well, I can probably talk more generally about what I've done, if that helps. What I've done with lockdown as well. I mean, I've sort of limited my news intake, so I've sort of chosen that purposely chosen I don't want to be watching the news 24 hours a day. So what I've done is sort of picked a single news source, and then limited my time watching that. So at least I'm up to date, but I'm not sort of getting all this news all in one go. So I've sort of switched myself off a little bit from having sort of news feeds all the time. And I've sort of, one thing that sort of, as I've mentioned before, I've taken the advantage of the found time that I've got. So I've started to say, okay, I've got more time. What are the things that I've always sat down and gone, I've never got round to doing this, or I've never got round to doing that, and start to sort of learn new things and learn new skills. Right. So for example, I'm terrible on Excel. I've always been terrible on Excel. And my wife's brilliant on Excel. She's in finance and she's a whiz at it. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to sit down, and there's some amazing sort of free tutorials online on Microsoft website has, Office 365 training. You can go in there, and I've suddenly figured out how to build pivot tables and all that sort of stuff. Right. So for me, it's been about sort of keeping my sort of my learning going, because that's what empowers me. That's what sort of makes me feel more confident because I'm learning more. And then the other thing really I've done is sort of make sure I'm just switching off as well. So I've got a stream of sort of videos that I've got on YouTube that I find funny. So my wife would say she doesn't, but little comedy sketches and things like this. And every now and then I'll just go and sit in my room, and I'll watch 10 minutes of it, and it will make me smile. I remember why it makes me laugh, and then I'm back and I'm ready again. So there's just a couple of techniques that I've used. I think that the learning one for me has been really good. It's taking the time actually to learn new skills and do stuff that I've never really got round to doing, because that fulfills me. That's something that makes me feel more confident in my ability.
Right. And another thing I wanted to ask you is, what are recruiters going to be looking forward? I mean, one is, of course, being more tech savvy and things like that. You said that.
Yeah.
What are recruiters looking for in specific with people when the market picks up? What do we need to be ready with when we are going to be out there in the next 4 months, 6 months, when things settle down? Is there anything specific that the recruiters are going to be focusing on, other than, of course, everything that you've mentioned?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think those ones are the key ones for me that I think they're going to be looking for. I mean, obviously there's going to be role specific requirements there, but I think, you know, that adaptability is really, really important, I think, because, you know, organizations I think are going to be looking at the skill sets they've got more and more now, and how they can mobilize and resource those skills in-house, as well as recruiting externally. So there's a real sort of view going forward that how can organizations better use the skills that they've got internally into different sort of roles and different opportunities. So that ability to adapt. So again, you know, when speaking to recruiters, I always recommend, you know, when clearly in a job description it's got some key skills or key behaviors, start to think about 2 or 3 different examples of where you've demonstrated those before, and really bring them to the fore in terms of your cover letter, in terms of your CV, and in terms of the interview as well. So if they're looking for example, if they're really looking for adaptability, think back to what you've done in the past and really think of that scenario and bring that to life in something you've really done. So it's much more powerful than saying, I am adaptable. It's much more powerful to say I'm adaptable, and here's an example of where I've demonstrated that before. So I think recruiters, whatever they're looking for, I think recruiters, and it will set job seekers up in a really, when you're looking for a role, really powerfully if you can do that, if you can come with actual evidence of where you've demonstrated that before. Right,
and a lot of people have questions about how they can bring their skill sets on their resume or on their CV. Sometimes you have CVs that run off to 6, 7 pages, and there are people who say it has to be 2, you know, we stick to 2 pages and all of that. Very technical question in terms of recruitment. What do you think should an ideal CV look like? What does it vary for different people in different industries, or what does a recruiter look for when they build a good resume or a CV?
Yeah, I think there's there's a couple probably rules of thumb that will apply across most roles and CVs, and I think the first one really is, and the most important, is that first page, and even the sort of the first quarter or first half of that first page, because that's your real sort of that's your sort of marketing piece there, right? So that's your prime real estate to grab attention. So when we're in I do a lot of run some workshops around writing job ads and all that sort of stuff, and we use the marketing formula around sort of grabbing attention first and then grabbing interest. So you've got that sort of prime real estate. So that bit just sort of just where underneath your name, and that first bit there is really the opportunity to sort of showcase your skills. So that first half of the page is absolutely prime real estate. So showcase not just, you know, what you've done, how you've done it, and really sort of try and create a really strong, you know, written profile of 2 or 3 lines of exactly who you are. If you think about the marketing spiel you get if you go to you see an advert and it gives you a quick sort of 3 or 4 lines of that product, you know, think of it in that same way. How do I get who I am and what I've done in that sort of short space quickly. Another rule of thumb is not to make it too long, really. I mean, I tend to say sort of 2 to 3 pages. You know, it's key in those 2 to 3 pages when we're looking at the sort of employment part of that. Again, not just to sort of list bullet points of the job description and responsibilities, maybe, you know, what you actually did, and bring it to life a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, some roles will require sort of slightly different CVs. If it's a sort of a technical role that you're applying for, you know, having those technical skills at the top, again, you could put them in your profile, because recruiters will sort of scan through relatively quick, in the same way that a job seeker would scan through a job ad, right? So we're looking for sort of key things. So it's grabbing that attention on that first sort of quarter to half or third to half of that CV, which is the key thing.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Ned. But how much time do you think a recruiter spends on an average in selecting a CV? I mean, is there something in the mindset of, okay, I look at it for 30 seconds, for a minute, or how do I grab that attention? You said, of course, bring that skills on the top. But if you're a recruiter, how much time would you be spending on screening a CV?
It really depends. I mean, it can really differ. You know, some recruiters work in different ways to others, but I think, you know, if you can get that first half of the page really sort of reflecting what they're looking for in a job ad. So the job ad gives away a lot of information, right? So you can start to sort of identify what are the key skills, what's the key experience or key behaviors this employee is looking for, and then how do I start to sort of position that in my profile. So for example, in my profile at the top, I've got a sort of 3 or 4 line comment or intro. I've got in there, first line is, I'm an HR graduate with 23 years experience in recruitment and 15 years experience leading in-house talent acquisition function. So immediately, there's no guessing who I am or what I do. It's really clear who I am. And I think if you can have that sort of first sentence really clear, it's going to grab attention. But it's always good when you're writing CVs is just to be sort of very concise but clear on who you are and try and get that in straight away.
Okay, coming back to industries, a little bit about questions on, do you see any industries thriving in this scenario at the moment, other than what we've spoken of? And which are the industries that are likely to pick up in the next 6 months when the economy picks up across the globe?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure if you're seeing what you're seeing in Bahrain or the Middle East. I think you know, I mean, if I was going to have a guess, I mean, tech will probably come back a little bit faster than most, because we're so reliant on tech. And even if you look at sort of, you know, the Nasdaq at the moment and the US shares, certainly, I mean, they're being held up quite a lot by tech organizations. So you know, are those tech organizations really going to sort of be pulling this forward a little bit more? I don't know. What do you see? What do you feel over there? I mean, it's
well, right now I think it's pretty much it has been a little you know, Bahrain's a very small place compared to the UAE. I think the UAE was just picking up last year, and you know, after the big crisis in 2011 and all of that. So it's 2009 especially, and we were just picking up, and then came the oil crisis, right? So we again it hit them pretty much bad, and the UAE was beginning to show some signs, but now it's pretty much economic activity or even recruitment for that matter has been very slow. But there are certain industries, like I said, I've seen hiring on e-commerce. A lot of these people amalgamating app setters, such as food delivery apps, or you know, all of these people are looking for people to be hired. I'm sure you've heard of Talabat, which has been here.
Yes.
So they're hiring for some in some places. I've also seen insurance picking up to a large extent. Definitely oil and gas is not picking up for some time more. So yeah, so I think it's very industry specific, but I wouldn't, I mean, Bahrain's not really the benchmark because it's a very small economy compared to the UAE, the Saudi Arabia, or even in size, in terms of volume. But definitely there's been a little bit of a steady movement in terms of not too many people getting laid off at one shot. There's been a huge problem in terms of paying salaries, but the government's pitching in for small and medium enterprises in Bahrain. And that's how it is. So basically, if you look at it, there are certain industries that are doing okay, but hospitality, from where I come, has been one of the worst affected. And we really don't know. I mean, unless travel picks up, we really cannot say. Airlines, of course, you know, is already hit really bad. So unless all of this picks up, I think hospitality as a thing will remain a little stagnant in itself.
Yeah. And we've seen similar here with, you know, we've got obviously a very strong domestic airline infrastructure
Right.
here. And what's been really interesting is actually sharing of resource. So Qantas had to lay off a number of their staff, and one of the big supermarkets here went, well, actually, we could utilize those skills and those people to come and work for us for a period of time. So what's been great is seeing, so there's a lot of sort of been quite a bit of collaboration between organizations that, you know, do need to sort of reduce their headcount and those that need to increase it. So that collaboration between organizations, I think, has been really, really interesting. And again, it's sort of looking at those transferable skills, right? So there's going to be, you know, absolute transferable skills in terms of customer service between those two completely different industries.
Right.
And, you know, that's something to really think about. Again, for, you know, when looking for roles, as I said, is trying to sort of pull out and identify those transferable skills when you're looking at a job ad and highlighting them.
All right. And are you in touch with what happens in the Middle East at the moment in terms of, are you aware of a lot of what's happening in the market right now?
No, I haven't. Well, I've been sort of out of the market there for a while. I've still got sort of friends that are over there, but yeah, no, Middle East, I haven't really sort of been that close to. I miss it incredibly. You know, I'd loved my time in the Middle East. It was probably one of my favorite times when I was recruiting, and actually my time in India as well. I absolutely loved that. But yeah, unfortunately, I haven't really had so much exposure as much as I would have wanted to.
Right. I mean, you said you enjoyed your time in India. I was just asking you, what are your memories of India? How did you happen to go to India or visit India, and on what accord? And what are your fond memories of India?
Yeah, so I had a team in India. So I had a team of recruiters when I was at AIG in India. And as I said, we were building 3 big global shared service functions. So we were bringing a lot of finance, a lot of big data skill sets, and the other one slips my mind, which was catastrophe modeling. So really, I mean, we had these vast offices to fill, and I absolutely loved my time there. I was there probably every other week for about a year. And at one point I was there solidly for I think 3 weeks or a month.
Which cities in India have you been to, if I may ask?
So predominantly it was in Bangalore, but we also had some work in Mumbai as well. But I absolutely loved India. I think the people were amazing. The food was just unbelievable. The hospitality was just fantastic, and lots and lots of positivity. It was great. I mean, the team that I was managing, we were hiring a lot of people at the time. Very positive, very go-getting, and the candidates we met as well, absolutely fantastic. So really, really loved my time in India, and actually learned quite a lot in terms of recruiting there.
Wow, awesome. And you've done recruitments in India when you were in the Middle East, right? If I'm right.
Yeah, so I was in the Middle East. I had a team. I managed a team in India. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. We have another question that's come in. There's one person asking us, what would be? Do you see any change in pay scales in the coming months? I mean, and are there different pay scales in different markets? Are there going to be any change? Are you going to be seeing more talent? And is there a supply demand kind of a thing? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not one I've really thought about. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, have you got a view on that, Immanuel?
No. I mean, I mean, these are. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but these are.
No, it's fine. It's just. I think it's a really good question, but I don't know is the answer. I think we'll have to see what sort of happens. I think most organisations have pay structures and pay scales that are formed as part of budgets. Whether they'll change, I'm not sure.
What about your current clients, if I may ask you? I mean, how is that going? You still have people. You said you've been having a busy past few weeks, and
yeah.
So how is that seen? I mean, are they recruiting in the same pay scales? Are they looking for more people to come in more cheaper in this situation? How does
I'm
that
not. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. I've seen recruitment continuing as it for those companies that are still hiring as was. I think there's probably more candidates coming through. I mean, but what's interesting with my business, I've had to completely sort of change what I was doing, and part of that is now really focus on developing recruiters. So I was going in and sort of working with organizations and doing strategic reviews of talent acquisition, helping them build new processes, helping them become more efficient. And I had in January, I had almost 3 contracts ready to go. They all went, so I had nothing. So what I did is pivoted my business, and we're using that word pivot quite a lot at the moment, which is I think a good description. But I pivoted my business to provide now online training and online workshops for recruiters to become better. So I'm now sort of developing recruiters, in-house recruiters, to become more efficient around the work that they do and really elevate themselves. So when things go back or start to move back and we're recruiting again, they can provide a much better service within the organization. So I see my clients I'm seeing in a slightly different way to what I was beforehand, because I'm offering a slightly different service. But those that are recruiting, I'm not seeing any, I haven't heard of any changes in sort of pay scales or anything like that.
Okay.
I think there's just more candidates applying.
Right. All right. And some of the questions are, what can we expect in terms of talent acquisition? I really don't know what question this is. Very vague, actually. In terms of change in talent acquisition, have you seen any changes in terms of how people are acquiring talent?
Yeah, and I think again, this is going to be a big change, because the way that we've recruited historically has to change. We can't run face-to-face interviews, and actually that leads on to another piece of advice. But if you are looking for roles, is to really sort of practice video interviewing. Right. Because it's very different. But as recruiters, as talent acquisition functions, we've got to change the way that we're doing things, because we can't operate. So I've been speaking to and training some recruiters this week who historically hired call center staff through face-to-face assessment centers. Right. And now they're saying, well, we can't do that. How do we now get this all done without actually meeting candidates face-to-face? So we're now working on how can we, and they're working on it, and I'm giving some advice on how can we actually get that all online? Can we make it different? So I think fundamentally the way that we recruit, it has to change, because we literally can't do it the same way. We can't do it in that traditional way. And I think for job seekers, I think that the change there is that actually the processes might take a little bit longer. Right. So it's just something to be aware of. Yeah, and I think talent acquisition will change fundamentally. The way our recruitment process and our recruitment strategies have to change. Although there might be more candidates in the market potentially, right. Actually how we manage the process has to change. And actually, even for hiring managers who could be remote as well, if they're still working from home, how do we onboard remotely if we're not back in offices yet? So I think that there's a lot of transformation that needs to happen. Right. To really be out for a talent acquisition to come out and be really successful and be efficient, what I would call really efficient and quality function, not just a transactional one.
All right, thank you so much. Steve, a friend of mine has offered to give some perspective into the Middle East and Bahrain. Do you mind me?
Oh, great.
Right, I think that's Jared. Hi, Sheriff, hi.
Hi, Immanuel.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
For joining in. So I think you offered to give us some perspective into the Middle East and Bahrain. So tell us a little bit about how the market is at the moment and what you think is going to happen in the next few months.
So in terms of the Middle East, currently what's happening is 2 major industries are being directly impacted. One is hospitality, travel, and tourism, because as you know, the Middle East make up the big 3 airlines, which is Emirates, Qatar, and Etihad. So this industry is going to be affected a lot. There has already been mass layoffs in the airline industry for crew and pilots.
Yeah.
So this sends a very negative wave in to people who want to join this particular industry. And also there's been a lot of layoffs in the hotel industry.
Right.
So this is going to take some time to pick up, probably a year to 18 months.
Wow. Okay.
People are talking about the industry taking more time to pick up, like 3 years, but I personally think it's going to be 12 to 18 months because people are currently locked up in their houses, and then they're very frustrated.
Right.
So once things get relatively normal and we get used to living with the pandemic, they would want to travel. So it will pick up fast,
Right.
but not as fast as it crashed, but it will pick up fast. It's not all doom and gloom. Then the second thing is oil. Now, this is a very major contributor to the GCC economies. So oil prices, have crashed to such a low level that you actually are being paid to buy oil, or to take oil rather. So this is going to take some time. There's going to be a lot of shift. There are a lot of people leaving the Middle East. There's a mass exodus of economic immigrants. So these people are going to be leaving, and what will eventually happen is when the economy picks up, their positions, or the positions which were currently closed, when they start reopening, these will be replaced by local talent. So there's going to be a bit of a mindset change in terms of how the locals perceive a job. It may not always be like, okay, if I choose a job, it has to pay me a minimum of X amount of salary. So there's going to be that sort of a mindset change. And the GCC will has already actually started, putting forward a lot of austerity measures in terms of cutting down their expenditure, reducing handouts. Like Saudi Arabia has they've actually stopped the allowance which they're giving to the citizens.
Right.
There's also going to be more mopping up of revenues like taxation and all this.
Right.
So the major challenge what we're going to see is the major trend we're going to see is the exodus of expatriates and more of local staff being recruited.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sheriff, for coming in there. What do you think about this, Steve? I mean, the whole perspective about nationalization and all of that, it's always been there. And now, do you think there's going to be a dearth of talent when things pick up?
Sorry, do you
think there's going to be a paucity of some kind of talent? I mean, there's going to be a dearth of talent in terms of people exiting the market, and when things pick up, do you think there's going to be more jobs and less people to take them up?
Well, I think what's going to be interesting for me, and one thing I'm still sort of playing around with in my mind because I haven't quite landed on it, and maybe you guys can help me, is something that Jared mentioned there, is that actually, it might take a little bit longer for hospitality to come back, which, of course, people that were in hospitality before may then not be around as much when they come back because they found other career opportunities.
Right.
So I think I've sort of predicted that we're going to see a lot of people sort of changing careers here, actually having the opportunity to sit back and say, do you know what, I've got these transferable skills. I've got the opportunity to do something different and start to go down a different track. And I think that might be quite challenging for employers when they come back, because people have started to look at different opportunities. I know a couple of people have lost roles and have said, actually, I'm now going to start to learn a skill set that I really think is going to take me in a different direction. Something I've always wanted to do. It's been a bit of a pause and a reset opportunity. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens for those sectors that come back a little bit further down the line than others, because I think there's going to be I think there personally be high demand, because people that have worked in those sectors have gone potentially to other ones.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just trying my hands on doing something online right now, so I don't know where that will lead. So so it is. I mean, I think it's forcing all of us to look into alternatives, not just for the hospitality people. I think for a lot of people who've actually lost their jobs are going to find means and ways to thrive and survive. So I think that is going to happen. What do you think about migration laws? I mean, in this scenario, do you think people are going to still migrate to different countries? They're going to look for jobs, and our people in like in Australia is a great country that people have always looked to as migrate, or the UK or anywhere in these places. I mean, do you really think these markets are still going to substantially accept people from other countries, open borders even more? Is globalization going to continue the way it is? It's a very general question, but I mean, you can choose your way.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, I think international travel, the ability to travel internationally is going to be an issue, obviously. So I think that's clearly going to slow down that sort of globalization and global mobility element. But again, you know, I guess it really comes back to what it looks like post pandemic. You know, what are the skill sets that every country needs that they need to sort of bring people in for.
Right.
So I don't think it's ever going to sort of. I think it's probably going to slow. It's slowed completely now, but I think it's still going to. It's going to take a while to open that up because of travel restrictions to some extent. But yeah, I think again we'll have to see how it plays out.
Right. So a little bit about Talent Rich and what you do, maybe to tell us what you do in Australia, and what are the industries you cater to at the moment?
Yeah. So as I said, you know, I work with organisations now that sort of want to. Well, the main part of the business is working with organisations, consulting with them around their current talent acquisition strategy and their processes. So how can they be more attractive to candidates? How can they have better processes? How can they have a better candidate experience? So all of that, and how can they reduce cost in terms of hiring so they're not going out to agencies so much, which I think is going to be a really key part actually going forward, because I don't think organizations are going to have as much sort of open operational expense budget to go and spend on recruitment agencies because of the situation we've been in. So they're going to want to do a lot more in-house and be more effective. So that's one part of the business that I do, which has been a lot harder to do. In fact, in the three pieces of work I had that I lost were because I couldn't get on site and I couldn't review and I couldn't sit there. But generally what I do is do a review, build a roadmap of potential change and enhancements to help them sort of take their recruitment capability from here to here. And the main one I've been working on now has been I run an online workshop called the Modern In-House Recruiter, and that is it runs over 3 days, and it's 2 to 2.5 hours in those 3 days.
Right.
And we talk about the first module was around what good looks like in talent acquisition,
right.
And then setting up for success, how you can work with your hiring manager to get yourself really set up for a vacancy.
Right.
Then the second module is about writing really compelling job adverts.
Right.
And then the third one is actually how you can go out and search and approach candidates. How do you go out and identify talent online? How do you go out and approach and headhunt? So what I'm finding is actually clients are taking the opportunity now to say, look, you know, even if we're not recruiting now, we've got low recruitment numbers, we want to develop our recruitment skills because now's the opportunity to do that. So I've actually been quite busy with that, which is nice because it was a sort of a pivot that I had to make quite quickly.
Right.
But yeah, it's all around sort of talent acquisition, in-house talent acquisition expertise. And then the other thing that's taken up a lot of my time, half my time at the moment, is the volunteering work that we're doing. So we've got about 30 volunteers supporting, and we've had about 250 job seekers come through our process in the last probably three or 4 weeks.
Right.
So really giving back and loving spending time with people at the moment, helping them with their CVs and their LinkedIn profiles. It's great. It's good to give back right now. Feels good.
You're actually helping people build profiles and CVs at the moment. Is that something?
Yeah. So we give advice to Australian job seekers on, you know, we review their CVs and then we give some advice. So I'll jump on a Zoom call with them individually for sort of half an hour and go through and give them some advice, and we'll talk through their LinkedIn profile. But if they're happy with that, we it might be that actually they've got an interview coming up and they just want a bit of an interview practice. So we tend to say, look, tell us what you need, and we'll carve out some time to help you. But we've got there's a lot of resources on the website as well, on our Jobs for Australia website, that allow people to sort of self-serve and learn their own stuff as well.
Right. And one thing that people are asking actually is, can we have a sample of a good resume? I mean, it's too vague. I mean, I recruit as well, so I understand that it's very difficult to put and say this is how a template of a resume should look like. But is there any places online where we can get good resume templates, or how to build a good resume kind of a thing? What would you suggest, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few resources online. I tend to say that CVs are quite personal, and templates are good. They do help structure a little bit.
Right.
And there's lots of different websites you can go to find them. But I think if my piece of advice is sort of use that sort of attention at the top, then gaining their interest pretty quickly. But most sort of I think I'm just trying to remember in the Middle East whether any of the job boards there have resources pages with CV templates. I can't remember. I know LinkedIn have done some stuff before, I think, and Indeed. I think Indeed have got some.
But is having a picture on your CV important? What do you think of it? Because in the Middle East it is. I mean, when I'm recruiting, I often ask people for candidates to have a picture of themselves on their CVs. But I'm sure in Australia it's going to be different. I'm not. You can't force a candidate to have a picture. Is that right?
No, I think it's personal choice. I mean, personal choice. I've never had a picture on my CV. But I know friends that have, and I think it's really.
But I do think you look photogenic. I mean, that's fine.
Sorry, say that again.
I said you do look photogenic. I said.
Thank you. But I mean, I think I don't think it makes. Again, in Australia, is it common? We do get some. We don't. It really is. I think it's.
But are you allowed to ask a candidate to compulsorily have a picture on there?
No. Yeah. I don't think. No, I don't. No.
Yeah. Right.
Don't think so.
So I'm just going to be picking up a few more questions. Some of them are asking us, if you are an HR or a recruiter at this point of time, what kind of skills do you think you should be working on? From an HR recruiter perspective, if you're a recruiter, what are the skills you need to upgrade yourself with?
Yeah, I think it's a good one because there's so many different sort of skill sets. I mean, if you think about how recruitment is evolving, we're doing a lot more around sort of active candidate sourcing.
Right.
So as well as being so we talk about in our sort of workshops that you've got sort of reactive recruitment and you've got proactive recruitment, and that proactive end, it's all about sort of building talent pools, nurturing talent pools, communicating with talent. So I think that's one of the key skills for recruiters really, is to start to think about how can I build skills that nurture talent and build pools. And so I am in front of my vacancy. I'm not reacting every time one comes up. And that's a real big shift to becoming a really efficient and cost-effective recruitment function.
And how do you identify talent from online? Because that's something we used to in this part of the world. But when you look at a lot of people, they say, no, we like to have a face-to-face interview. We like to bring the candidate down. But and to begin with, you did say that all of that is going to change from a recruiter's point of view.
Yep.
But how does a recruiter actually identify the right talent online? How do you know that this is a right fit for your organization from your perspective? Yeah.
So do you mean, so when I was talking about identifying online, I'm sort of going out and proactively approaching talent. You're talking about sort of assessment?
Kind of an assessment or an interview. I mean, if you were to conduct interviews online for a role that is probably highly skill specific, and how do you see that? I mean, how do you assess these people online? Is that
I mean, there are some fantastic technology out there right now that supports that, absolutely supports that. So online assessments, live assessments, video assessments. So there's a real sort of, and we've been lucky. We've actually been really fortunate in talent acquisition generally over the last, I guess probably 3 to 5 years, there's been a real glug of amazing talent acquisition and recruitment technology coming through to support us in our processes, to the point of actually sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. And that's again where I help my clients. They're like, we've got all this stuff that we could look at, we don't know where to start. And the first thing you need to start is, okay, what's the problem you're trying to resolve, not just get the tech in. But there is some brilliant technology out there that allows you to sort of assess candidates through technology, online assessment, part video, part written. I've adopted some in some of my previous roles as well. But it's going to become the norm, and I think both recruiters and organisations need to move to that quickly, because it's going to be really difficult to I think move back to that sort of physical face-to-face assessment, certainly in the short term. And I think job seekers need to get used to sort of using video. And that's why I would say sort of have a practice, a mock interview with a friend on video, look at your sort of body language, how you are, because if you're in your home environment and you're on video, you naturally become more relaxed. So you've got to be conscious about that as well. So there is more and more happening. There's organizations that I know or heard of, haven't seen them in detail, that actually run a fully end-to-end process where they don't meet the candidate until the day they start. So everything is either automated or at least all online, even the onboarding up until the point that they start. Whether I don't think we'll ever go to that sort of complete completely not talking to.
I also understand that a lot of your job has gone more strategic now than it used to be, more functional, about just looking for candidates and helping out with a lot of organizations. But now you're actually going into streamlining processes and trying to make recruitment more of an efficiency. Is that something you think that's going to pick up on I mean, you think this is something that's going to change in recruitment perspective? Are people going to be more process oriented now? They're going to look at recruitment more strategically? What is going to change from that? I mean, you've done that. It's a transition for yourself. Do you see it happening globally?
Do you mean in terms of the recruiter skills and what they're going to be doing?
In terms of recruiter skills. Sorry about that, but I think recruiters are majorly about the agencies were looking about the right candidates, getting the right fit, and more like a functional aspect. But you've turned around and said, okay, let's do something more strategic, help organizations with, streamlining processes, getting things in place, making them more efficient in HR and things like that. Do you think that's going to be common in all markets? Like, you think people are going to get more strategic now, especially from a recruitment perspective, rather than just having to, operate on skills functionally?
Well, I think recruiters will need to become more innovative. I think building strong strategy is one thing, and then sort of executing on that strategy is the next step. And I think recruiters' roles have changed fundamentally. If you think about traditionally, a recruiter's role would be they'd pick up a vacancy, they'd advertise it, they'd deal with the applications that come through, they maybe do some sort of assessment, and then they'll get that person in the business. We see, and I see, actually the recruiter's role more and more being on that sort of candidate sourcing bit. Okay, so we've seen historically we haven't owned that as much, because we've put a job on a job board, or we put it on our careers website. Whereas now the recruiter's roles, and this is probably talking more pre-COVID-19, is that they're becoming much more digital marketing experts. So we've got all these social media platforms. I ran a campaign for one of my organizations that I worked for, that needed 500 new staff at the time. And it was actually a piece of legislation that was coming into the country, and all of those organizations also needed to hire more of these people, but the supply coming through was low. And we said, do you know what, as an organization, our strategy with this is we're not going to put all of our jobs on job boards because everybody else is doing that. And we're going to be in a marketplace which is really crowded. So we went almost all social media, and all of our recruiters started to become sort of social media digital marketeers, engaging in actually writing really compelling content, not just job ads. So the role of the recruiter around how they really sort of source candidates and find candidates and get candidates engaged in that organization is the big change for me, as well as all the technology coming through.
Yeah, and you also mentioned this amazing technology. What kind of what technology are we actually talking about? Is it about selection of candidates? Is it about an interviewing application? Do you have an app that interviews, or do you have an online portal? Can you tell us a little bit about? Can you put your finger on a couple of things that it really helps people in technological recruitment at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one at the moment is video interviewing. We're seeing sort of organisations having to adapt to that pretty quickly.
Right.
So there's some great ones sort of globally that are out there in the market that are worth looking at. There's some great ones, great sort of local Australian businesses that have done. They've got some great technology. Australia's got some great recruitment technology coming through at the moment, and relatively new businesses. For me at the moment, I think the priority is going to be around video interviewing technology, and I'm not talking Skype or Zoom, because that is a sort of a level to start at, but the next level up is really how do you do in-depth assessment online. So positioning a question with a candidate pre-recorded, that they then record and send back, and that can be shared with the hiring managers and the recruiters as well.
Right. And some of them are actually asking the same questions coming in through any industries that are going to specifically pick up in recruitment in short and medium term. I'm not sure if you want to revisit that question once again.
Yeah, again, I think, I think travel and hospitality is going to probably be a bit slower, as we've already said. I think, and I think the other one we've obviously not talked about is health. So health is obviously is fairly busy sector as well right now. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks.
But there's also a big taboo in terms of healthcare at the moment. I mean, there's people, not everybody is looking at it as a very positive career at the moment, I guess. So how that's going to erode in the next few months or a year of where we are. There's another question that says, do we have to be in formals or casuals while doing an online interview and a video interview?
I just read that, and then as soon as we switched this video on, I realised you were in a smart blazer and a shirt, and I've got my polo shirt on. So I might sound a bit contradictory with this, but I think my view is always go prepared as you would as if you were doing a face-to-face interview. It might feel a little bit strange sitting at home in a shirt and tie or a suit or however you would normally go, but I would always sort of err on caution and go for the smartest that you can and you would, because you can't go wrong. I mean, I remember once I turned up at day one of a job in a full suit and shirt and tie, and everybody else was casual because they'd forgotten to tell me that was the process. But actually, if it'd been around the other way, it probably would have been a bit different. But my grandfather always said to me, whatever you do, go as smart as you can. Right.
But that's also very subjective, right? I mean, what you deem as smart might not be a recruiter sees you.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks. I mean, I should have given you a heads up on the dress code, but sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I've always seen you in a t-shirt whenever I've spoken to you. So I was like, I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, I've fallen into that trap of working from home. It's it's interesting.
All right, so I'm going to open up only for a minute to see if we're having any questions, but we're almost on time in terms of when we started. We've got an hour. So if there's anybody who's got questions, you could probably chat in on you type in the chat box, and we'll be happy to answer those questions in the meantime. For those of you who have certificates, we've already told you that you need to apply for certificates with us. I will be sharing the details with you on how you can do that if you want to apply for the certificates over WhatsApp. Do share your feedback with us in a while. Any questions? Or I think we should probably wind up. So I'd appreciate if you have any questions, you could probably type in the chat box so we can ask Steve if there's any specific questions.
Before we go, I think one thing I'd like to really emphasize is that taking this time now, if you are looking for a new role, to really develop those sort of online networking skills. You know, LinkedIn in particular is a very powerful. I mean, met through LinkedIn. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and you know, having that visibility and being and engaging on there is very, very rewarding. So, you know, I've built pretty much most of my client base from just engaging with content online. So I've joined groups of professional groups on LinkedIn of subjects that I'm really interested in.
Right.
I highly recommend doing that if you're, you know, if you're looking for a new role, is to find professional groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn,
right,
that you can start to engage with and get content. You know, write content. I'd never written any content online before until I started my business, and I went, do you know what? I'm just going to go for it, and just love doing it. But engage with content, comment on content.
right.
And start to build that network and connect with people, because it's incredibly powerful. You'll learn a lot. I've learned a lot from it, but it will open up discussions like this and lots of other discussions by doing that. I can't emphasize building those skills around online networking. It's very, very powerful.
Thank you. Amazing. I mean, I think that's a very good point that you made, because a lot of people are still apprehensive about getting on social media. I don't believe how that is, but oh, we don't want to get on social media. Oh, we don't want to interact. It's okay. You know, but that's the whole point. I mean, if you're going to be at home, how else do you think you're going to be interacting with other people?
Yeah. I was a little bit nervous because, you know, as I said, I've never written. I mean, I went straight in and started writing content, and I was thinking, well, who's going to want to, you know, is anybody actually going to want to listen to this? But actually, you know, people do engage with it. You know, and actually just commenting on somebody else's post as well brings visibility. It builds personal brand. So I you know, I was in the mindset of, I'm just going for it and see what happens. And I think, you know, if you put yourself out there, I think great things happen.
And that's pretty much how you caught my attention, because I've seen your posts on LinkedIn, and I've seen, I mean, even if they were small descriptives, they were really adding value to people out there, I think. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that this just because I want to say it, but I really think that having so much of experience in the industry, that your knowledge would add up to a lot of people in this time. And I've experienced that myself. And I really think that people like yourself who've got so much value to add is making yourself available is in itself is a great thing. So thank you so much, Steve. People are actually asking us for specific industries, if we can find jobs in the specific industry. Guys, I mean, once again, I always tell this in the webinars, although people come and speak, but we can give you a lot of tips to you, but we are not geniuses here. I mean, we've all got through here with our own experiences, and we can give you knowledge only based on how much we know. It's not necessary that we always need to know everything. There's one more quick question on emotional intelligence, and that interests me. I'm going to take that up with you, Steve. It says, what's your perspective on digitization taking over emotional quotient? How do you ensure that people are the right cultural fit? Because this is an interesting question. I think, Steve, you got to answer this. We're going all digital about recruitment. How do you ensure that the people you recruit or hire are emotionally intelligent, or they have the EQ apart from the IQ?
Yeah, so I think, you know, emotional intelligence is important. I think I'm a believer around not necessarily cultural fit, but cultural add. So, you know, it's about what will this candidate bring to the organization as a whole? Are they going to sort of bring stuff that we don't already have? So I don't think cultural fit is always the right approach. I think cultural add is much more sort of much more powerful in terms of you know, building an organization's capability. But emotional intelligence is, I think, it's an important skill set.
But there's also a lot of assessments in these days that do bring out the emotional intelligence aspect as well, right? I mean, it's not necessarily they are testing you on IQ. So I've seen a lot of assessments for candidates that have come up, which talks on the EQ aspect as well. I'm not sure if that's a thing in your clients. I mean, do they look for these kind of assessments when they actually hire, or is that a completely headhunting aspect, does not go for regular candidates? I'm not quite sure how it
Yeah, I think it depends on the employer. I think there's certainly sort of psychometric tools and tests and assessments that sort of do measure emotional intelligence, but yeah, I think it depends from employer to employer.
Right. All right, Steve. I think thank you so much for your time, and please let me know if there's anything else that you're adding value to. I'm going to connect a lot of people to your platform, if that's all right, on LinkedIn. So you get to know more about you, and most of all, thank you for being there and making yourself available, because the one big complaint that we always get on LinkedIn is people do not respond to messages, or they don't make themselves available to candidates. And I think that's very nice of you to have made yourself available to all of us.
It's my pleasure. It's as I said, wherever we are in the world, we're all in this together. And I think if we can help each other out in any way, more than happy to share. What have we been, an hour and a half of my time? It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you guys have found it useful.
And it's brilliant, especially because you've had the last few weeks been very busy, and you've been telling me that more than just once. And so I think it was very nice of you to take time out and do something pro bono for all of us. I really appreciate your efforts, and I wish we could have more in the future, and to tie up with you and do more for the community.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Please write to us on WhatsApp or email, as we've communicated, with your feedback, and for the certificate as well. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to close off over here, and I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. We're closing here.